Hello and welcome back after lunch. After the lunch break, hopefully you had some nice break. And we are back here in the third section of today with a very full panel with wealth of experience. And we'll be looking again at financing and financing of the transition and what are some of the strategies, what are some of the products, some practical solutions that can contribute to the transition of the economy. And maybe without any further ado, because we have a very interesting panel ahead of us, so I will very kindly ask all the speakers to make their way to the stage. So the panel will be moderated by Tomasz Piasecki, Associate Director of Financial Services and Sustainable Finance in Mazars. Please, Tomasz. And then we will continue. So we have Petr Fiala, Head of Trading, Trade Financing and Factoring, Raiffeisen Bank. Please. Peter. We have Ota Melcher, Head of Economics Transformation Unit, Ministry of Finance, Czech Republic. Matúš Pul, Chief Sustainability Officer of Česká spořitelňa. We have Pilar Solano, Director of Central and South Europe for the European Investment Bank. And Jarek Rot, as well, Chief Sustainability Officer of BNP Paribas Poland. So enjoy the discussion and thank you very much.
Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to lead on this discussion. Today we have representatives from three types of financial players. We have three representatives from commercial banks, Jarek, Petr, and Matúš. We have a representative of a development bank, Pilar, with us. And we have a representative of the Ministry of Finance in the Czech Republic, Ota. Why am I bringing this? So as you may know, in order to achieve climate neutrality, in order to fulfill the Paris Agreement, a lot of financing needs to be found, needs to be made, and key players in that are financial players. In that case, we can speak of commercial banks and development banks. These players have different roles, and we will discuss those roles. So we are going to talk about transition financing, the main strategies, main products, and solutions. I already mentioned about transition, what it means. To give you a little bit more to this, it's worth remembering what the key long-term goal is of all that we are discussing in this panel. So the key goal is to contribute to the effort of limiting global warming to 2 degrees in comparison to pre-industrial levels, as agreed under the Paris Treaty. This is something that individual countries in the EU committed to, but also EU committed itself. And what EU wants to do, particularly, is to achieve climate neutrality by 2050, which means a serious transformation of all of the key sectors of the economy. So we here talk about energy sector, transportation sector, manufacturing, agriculture, and real estate. And this can only be done with the private sector. The public sector itself cannot do it. According to the European Commission, the EU itself should be investing at least 1.5% of its annual GDP, which is roughly about 210 billion euros per year. Some of the leading advisory firms, they estimate that the world as a whole should spend up to $280 trillion by 2050, which is roughly around $9 trillion a year. So what is the role of commercial banks here? What is the role of banks in general? The same studies, they say that commercial banks should probably facilitate 1/3 of that financing. But we also have to remember that there are other challenges. It's not only about climate neutrality, meeting the Paris Agreement, but it's also about facing the the short-term challenges. So here we face inflation, we face the military conflict that we have in Europe right now, but we also face trade conflicts and what is expected to come. So with a great representative of a development bank, the European Investment Bank, which is the bank of the European Union, development of European Union, the first question would be to Pilar. What is, in your view, the role of the European Investment Bank, and what are the current strategies for financing transition?
Thank you, and thank you very much for everyone, to everyone for being here after lunch. Hopefully you're not too asleep and you got a coffee. So in representing the EIB, I'm not sure how many people know what the European Investment Bank does. Thank you. So just a couple of, taking a step back 1 second. So I'll put a context and I will dive into your question. So we are indeed a bank, an investment bank, but we're a bit of a special investment bank. We're owned by the 27 member states. As it was introduced, we are a development bank. We are rated AAA, and we are slightly large. We have a balance sheet of about €500 billion. We operate both within the EU, but also outside. And our purpose is to develop and bring inclusivity also within the European Union. And so I am saying this because our main core business is to finance projects, provide financing, long-term financing to projects that are contributing to our policy goals, right? And I will get in a second as to how we do this, but in the context of the transition, I'm not sure whether I can bring a factor as a new strategies, because we are consolidating a strategy that we set ourselves out to deliver almost 5 years ago now. We started with our energy lending policy, so that was focused on the energy space, where we consciously selected to avoid financing unabated fossil fuel projects. So on the back of that, fast forward another year, and our ambition grows, and we wish to become not only what we are, which is the EU bank, but also the EU climate bank. So that meant that as of the end of 2020, all the 100% of our financing, which hovers between 60 to 70 billion a year, 100% of that financing is Paris aligned. And it means as well that 50% of our financing contributes to climate action and environmental sustainability. So with that in mind, is our strategy changing? Absolutely not. We are confirming the path we set ourselves out to support, which has been further reinforced by the events last year with the invasion of Ukraine. You may have heard of a program sponsored by the European Commission, which is REPowerEU. And so we have also committed in the space of energy to deliver an additional 30 billion over the next 5 years. So bit larger numbers. Now, how do we get there? As I was saying, we do mainly and foremost long-term lending. That is across the board in terms of client segments. So we do lending through public sector, both sovereign. We partner with the likes of the Ministry of Finance in Czechia. We also support the municipal sector, for example, through sub-sovereigns. We support public and private sector entities, corporates, mid-caps, SMEs, although the SMEs we partner with commercial banks, speaking of the role of commercial banks, and also structured finance or SPVs. So the role and the cooperation with the commercial banks is actually really important for the EIB. For those that don't know, when we finance projects, we finance up to 50%. And so that means we need to crowd in or co-lend with other actors, and oftentimes is with our partner financial institutions. So that is the major thing. What we have changed in that change of strategies in order for us to support even more green financing or transition financing into to a sustainable economy is we have also fostered different types of instruments to complement our toolbox that is supposed to address and adapt to the circumstances that you were describing. For example, we saw before the increase of the interest rates and the inflation, there was a need for the banks to be supported through capital relief products or de-risking certain structures, and so we offer also guarantees. We also offer, we participate in capital market transactions, sometimes with the banks through securitization, sometimes outright in the debt capital markets. And we also support a great deal of innovation in the green space. The EIB has a program rolling out venture debt, and we are pretty keen in scaling up our clean tech program. We do these things typically supported by guarantees from the European Commission, but we can do a lot of those. Since the onset of the crisis and the increase of inflation and the interest rates, for us, in our counter-cyclical role, we have seen an increased demand for our products and for our support. We are a very patient long-term investor. We also oftentimes transfer our funding advantage to our beneficiaries, so demand has gone up. Our supply is not going up, unfortunately, so we need to prioritize where we invest ourselves. Hopefully, we can liaise and contribute more to the private sector. And so I'll stop there because I think I'm taking too much time.
It's perfectly fine. So you mentioned that the European Investment Bank is setting itself as a bank for climate, right, for financing transition. So there is a clear path set that EIB is part of the EU's, I would say, plan to transition to a climate neutral economy. So it's perfectly in line with EU's plans. A question to Ota to maybe comment on the current EU regulation landscape with regards to sustainability and in terms of strategy for the banking industry and financing transition in Czech Republic in general. So what is your view on the current regulatory landscape, and what is the role of the government in all of this?
Thank you. Firstly, let me say it's an honor to speak at such an important regional event. My name is Tomasz, and I'm here represent the Ministry of Finance, where we recently established a unit on economic transformation. It's one of those initiatives of the Ministry of Finance to digest the boom in sustainable finance agenda and the regulation coming from the level of EU. But to address your questions, maybe I'd start touching a little bit on what's our perspective on the banking and financial industry in the Czech Republic, and what are the necessary conditions to unleash the potential of financing the decarbonization. So first, I think what we need is a regulatory environment that's conducive to the transition. We need to set clear rules and procedures and a set of principles that the financial market actors should follow. We also need some kind of a common or shared vision or a view on what constitutes a sustainable investment. And third, I think one of the key elements of the decarbonization and sustainable finance transition is that we need to make available robust and reliable data by setting some kind of like industry-specific or sector-specific data standards. So we all talk about the same points. Now, we see that it's creating challenges for the banking industry and for the financial industry, and what we see that the industry will have to adapt to these developments. And in terms of management practices, internal governance structures, or performance matrices, The industry should prioritize the sustainable investment by identifying sustainable activities and investments. And I'm mentioning these because when we look at this from the side of the government, we have some kind of similar challenges. The government also has to prioritize sustainable investment. And I mean, across the policy making, whether you negotiate about preparation of the budget, whether you negotiate about energy policy, whether you negotiate about sustainable transport, whether you negotiate about construction and housing, we have to reflect sustainability principles in all these preparation. Government should also focus on supporting green infrastructure. This is one of the key pillars, how to leverage also sustainable finance activities in the private sector by showing the way and making sure that the public expenditures devoted to infrastructure spending are invested in line with these principles. Next element I would mention is that the government should be very active in kind of educational and awareness activities in terms of making known to the financial sector participants, but also to consumers, what are the risks and opportunities coming with together with the transition and sustainable finance agenda. And this way, we're trying to build some efficient platforms how to discuss and negotiate the upcoming developments with other departments in the government, but also with key stakeholders in the financial sector. And we would like to build on these initial discussions that we had with a number of financial sector participants and representatives of the financial sector, and build something more robust as a discussion and exchange platform in the future. Now, back to the legislation changes that are coming. I think yesterday I've heard you had a very nice discussion, a robust discussion on the EU taxonomy, so I'm not going to spend time on this. It's a kind of a classification system that builds what we call a common language around like how to identify and categorize sustainable investments. This will be a very important element coming from the EU. It's complemented by some disclosure tools, some reporting mechanisms. This will be very important and challenging for the private sector. First, it's the directive on sustainable finance reporting, which will make the kind of reporting on sustainability performance of companies mandatory, and the other one for financial sector participants, and this is the sustainable finance reporting regulation, which will mandate financial sector players in terms of disclosure on how they kind of reflect on sustainability risks in their activities. And a fourth one, it's a couple of standards that are under negotiations or on which negotiation has been already concluded. One of them is the EU green bond standard, which kind of unifies the view on how sustainable bonds are being issued and what are the minimal thresholds or minimal conditions that should be fulfilled by these. Within the Ministry of Finance, we work on transforming the developments on the EU level into the domestic legislation. So we are currently working on the legislation on accounting and legislation on auditing. I might come back to our further activities if there's time, the discussion.
Perfect, thank you very much. So you mentioned the key regulatory developments in EU taxonomy, disclosures, green bond standards. I can add the ECB climate stress test. So this is all part of the sustainable finance landscape. Pilar mentioned that EIB aims to be the development bank of Europe for climate change, for climate transition. And in all of this, it would be very interesting to hear opinions from representatives of commercial banks. So given that EU has a clear clear vision on how it wants to get to climate neutrality. It has started to set regulations around this. How do you find yourself in all of this as a commercial bank? What sort of solutions do you bring, and how do you see your role in parallel, for example, to what a development bank can offer to the market, to the different industries? Petr, if I could ask you.
Thank you for the question, and thanks for having me here. I feel really privileged to be part of this summit, and I feel very privileged to speak on this panel with such individuals and the speakers as you guys are. The role of the banks, especially in the, not especially, but in the CEE region, we have to understand that basically the banking sector is playing a critical role in financing the transition. I'm not saying that we don't need the governments, that we don't need multilateral banks, but the key and the most critical role will be played by the banks. Therefore, all the environment which we have to create to support this transition is based on several stakeholders, and those stakeholders and those pillars in the transitions have to communicate and have to have a dialogue. That's why it's important that these summits are taking place. That's important that we have a dialogue, even though some of the pillars are having the more critical role than the other ones. We will see a huge development in that in coming year, especially within the solutions and the products related to the sustainable finance. A huge development, a huge evolution. The question which I'm asking to myself always is, do we need to create a new product, or shall we use properly the products and the solutions which are already in place in the other countries, in the other regions? Let's take the example of Czech Republic. Why the example of the Czech Republic? Because I'm from Czech Republic and we are sitting in the Czech Republic, so that would be the easiest way to take the example of that. Because the new versus innovation of the current products will be different from each another country, because the Austria, for example, from the region is far away or ahead of the other regions like the Czech Republic or the kind of countries like Czech Republic, Slovakia, Romania, Poland, whatever. So they have a special role, and I think we, from the regional perspective, we can consider them as a trendsetters in sustainable finance. That's what I always appreciate, that we talk with our colleagues from Vienna, because we can just copy paste and repeat what is already successful. But what happened in the Czech Republic? The most of the transactions which were realized in sustainable finance the last couple of years were green asset transactions. Why? It's absolutely natural, because there is already a clear guidance what asset is green, what asset is not green. So, and you can prove it. Yeah? So that's why basically all the banks, if they were providing the sustainable finance products, it was very much related to the financing the assets. While or actually that's why basically if you look at the portfolio of green assets and the portfolio transactions in the banks in the Czech Republic, you will see plenty of real estate transactions, you will see plenty of renewable transactions. But then we are focusing only on not a small, important, but still couple of the pillars. We need to go more on the top, on the overall balance sheet of the companies. That's why I'm a big fan of sustainability linked transactions. This is what can play a significant and very important role in the future, because then you have a clear strategy and you have ambitious targets. And that's where innovation will take place. Because if we again will stay with the example of the Czech Republic, sustainable strategy. How many companies already have a sustainable strategy in the place? Not too many. Yeah. Obviously, this is far better than it was 2.5 to 1 year ago, when my colleagues, which they are sitting here in the auditorium, were visiting the clients 1 year ago, because we established the team which is really advising and advocating ESG topic to the corporate clients. When they were talking to the clients 1 year ago, it was more about, you should take care of that, explaining what sustainability means, what ESG means. Yeah? Now the discussion with our clients is absolutely different. It's more, we have a sustainability strategy, please the bank look at that. Is it correct, is it not correct, how you would shape it, what kind of a KPIs we should apply, and etc. Yeah? So this is a huge development. And then the ambitious KPIs. Ambitionists have two brothers. Yeah? One is naive, and one is secure. I'm not saying that we should implement ambitious KPIs, which are absolutely naive, which we will never fulfill. And now we are pretty much in this space, because there is not methodology, there is no standardization on the market. We don't know what a KPI is relevant for steel industry in North Bohemia, South Moravia, in Romania, in Poland, whatever, because each and every region has a specificity. Yeah. So we need to be very careful with the KPI setting. That's where the innovation has to take place. And that's why I'm very happy that initiatives like science-based targets is in place, because this is exactly the way to go. Yeah. And we've heard on the previous panel how many companies in the Czech Republic already have science-based targets in place in the Czech Republic. Yeah, too. Yeah. It's not a victory, yeah, by the way. So this is why it's very important to have this in place. But what I just explained is related to the copying and innovating sustainable finance debt instruments. There is another sphere which will play even more important role in the future, in the coming future, and that's transaction banking. Something what will happen in coming years, and I don't know if that will be next year or in 3 years, 5 years, I don't know yet. But the sustainable global transaction banking will be a catalyst, will be something what will leverage all our efforts and actually help even the sustainability strategy of the companies. And when I'm talking about sustainable global transaction banking, I'm really pointing to all the aspects of the transaction banking. Trade finance, guarantees, letter of credits, which are related to the transactions or which have a positive effect in the transition. All the techniques in the supply chain finance, that's the very important in the Czech Republic and in the region, because we are not living in an isolated place. We are very much connected. Czech Republic is export-oriented. All our companies are part of the supply chain. So basically, if we implement the sustainability within the supply chain finance, then basically we have immediately data which we can analyze, which we can use, and which we can evaluate if we are heading to the right direction or not. So basically, this is a complex task which will come in the future. But transaction banking will play a very much crucial role. We can talk about the deposits, we can talk about the other products, but sustainability has to be there.
Okay, thank you very much. So interestingly, you mentioned sustainability-linked bonds, loans, trade finance, different solutions that you can find in these types of products. A very similar question to Matusz right now, also related to sustainability, your experience with sustainability as a representative of the biggest Czech commercial bank. We mentioned already a few products, but maybe you could mention some other products that maybe are developed for some smaller clients, because we not only talk about banking for large clients, big companies, but we also have SMEs, we have retail clients. Maybe you could share some insights on that.
Absolutely. Thank you, and good afternoon. When we are the biggest retail bank in the country, and when we were thinking, what kind of impact we can do and what our customers need in this time of 3 crises in a row, maybe we can take this as a new normal. So we have to be ready for what's coming, and our retail customers, we can see that a lot of them are really struggling, and there is a growing share of those customers who are not making money, not making enough money every month to meet their needs. So we have started 2 years ago a program to grow the financial health of our clients, because we think that it is really important to strengthen their standing for the social cohesion of the country. And we also think that by building their financial basis, we will build also their capacity to tackle also environmental issues. And when I come back to environment and climate, the largest impact that we all have is our housing. So how we live, especially how we heat our homes. So we think that the key initiative is energy efficient mortgages and energy efficient renovation loans. And we have launched energy efficient mortgage more than a year ago. We see a growing number of people and growing interest in this. When we were developing it, that was before the Russian invasion, we were thinking how we are going to sell this to these customers. Why would they invest into energy efficiency? Unfortunately, we don't have that problem. So now the problem is how to make it available for the people so that they can really take. It's an enormously complex project to renovate your house. If you how many of you have tried that yourself? Yeah. So I have a university degree and it wasn't enough for that. So to make it simple for the client and to also make it more affordable, together with the state, we have a very good state subsidies, and we are also looking for enhancing the role of the building societies, stavební spořitelny play in the renovation. So this is for retail, and for the SME clients, it is a very complex task to understand what is going on with the green transition and how how is it relevant to them. There was a poll about a year ago asking people about what they think about the Green Deal, whether they support it. It was roughly 40% of people that said that support it in Czechia. But then if you break it down and ask them, do you support clean energies? Do you support less hazardous materials? Do you support energy efficiency? And then over 80% say yes. So it's all about explaining these concepts to people and making it relevant for them. So we believe we have a role to play in explaining our customers how the transformation is relevant to their particular business. Yeah. And it will be different in all different industries. Czech economy is very sensitive on subsidies. So basically, people and businesses do what is subsidized, and that is very true in the green transition. So we are linking our advisory with the subsidies in circular economy, in water, in energy efficiency, in renewable energies. and also with some benefits on funding, making this a package that is easy for the businesses to understand and to manage. So, and I think that there is still a way to go for us, and it's also, and we combine this with our decarbonization effort, because you have to on the portfolio. If you look at the portfolio and manage the emission and measure the emissions, there you can see where we have the risks, but also this clearly shows where the opportunities are. So that's what we are trying to do: set up decarbonization pathways, and then on these high-emitting sectors, find targeted solution combining advisory, subsidies, and loans.
Thank you very much. So we spoke about facilitating different industries. So depending on the sector, there are different challenges in transition. We spoke about different clients and what those clients face in terms of challenges of transition, size, type of clients. We spoke about the fact that there are products that can be developed that can facilitate the transition, about creating new opportunities, but transition is also about moving out from certain sectors and probably divesting rather than investing. A question to Jarek. What is your view on setting limits to fossil fuel financing or carbon-intensive sector financing?
Super, thank you. Thank you very much for this question. Thank you for an invitation. Actually, I don't know. I'm the last. That's why I'm receiving the less sexy question. This one, because I would really like to focus on the business opportunities, and I will switch to this part. But being serious, of course, that's an important topic. So it was already visible in previous panels that we have those two sides, like stick and the carrot. It's true for the banks in terms of the regulations, but some programs looking at EIB and Pilar, but also on this positive side. So for clients, it's true as well. So there are those two elements, and looking at the science, there is no space for a discussion, right? If you look at IPCC, if you will look at International Agency for the Energy Agency, the message is very clear, and this is science-based, so it's not democracy. You cannot argue with this. The fact is that we have to limit the emissions, which means that we have to end up with the fossil fuels. And we will not succeed on this point if not having strict policies, especially within the commercial banks linked to this point. So in BNP Paribas, we have already in 2015 said that we are not engaging in new coal-based projects, transactions. We have a very clear strategy, exit strategy from coal. In 2030, it will be full exit, and this is in line with the pledges given and in line with the Paris Agreement. And we have to remember the more than 60% of global GDP is already subject to the pledges, net zero pledges. So we have to follow this. Having said this, I would like to come back to general topic, because when we are discussing this, at least myself, I have the feeling that we are talking about this very heavy duties or penalties when we are talking about the transition. Whereas it's really about the opportunities. Of course, there are challenges for sure, plenty of them. But there are also opportunities, especially for our region in which we are. And I'm a very big fan of certain simplification of topics. If you will look, for example, at Repower EU program, this is investment plan for 300 billion euro investments till 2030. If you will look at the details, 96% of this investment plan is focused on renewable energy and energy efficiency. So we should be doing the same within the banks, translating those directions into products, our knowledge, advisory for clients. We have a very interesting case in Poland. We have more than 5 million of single-family houses in Poland. Within the period of, let's say, 3 years, 1.2 million houses were installing the individual PV on the roofs. 1.2 million out of 5 million, roughly. This is huge. We have reached, in terms of photovoltaic installed power, we are more than 12 gigawatts of installed power. We had something like, I don't remember by heart, but like, 4 or 5 gigawatts in the official plan for 2030. So the plan that was created a few years ago is completely, exceeded by the reality. And the question is, why those people have decided to do so? I mean, they are all science-based and very care about the environment and very aware of all these facts. I doubt it, right? So there was a very simple subsidy being created in Poland, covering around 20% of the cost of the installation. And then, of course, there was commercial banks providing the financing. And for the people, it really paid off. I mean, they were looking, okay, these are my bills. This is the investment. So I will be repaying this. And in fact, my saving will cover most of the installment. So yes, let's go for it. The return on investment is very short, like 5 with the subsidy, 5 to 6 years. Okay, and we should be doing this. So we have to, in Poland there was this false, maybe true at the very beginning, but false concept created, a little bit of mathematics. So there was a triangle in which there was, in the climate, the cost, so efficiency, and the energy safety of the country. And there was a concept, we can't do everything. I mean, we have to choose, right? Right now, actually, if you look at the renewables, if you think about the cost, this is the cheapest energy source. If you think about the environment, this is pretty obvious. And also, after the war in Ukraine started, if you look at the new understanding of the energy safety, what is more safer than photovoltaic panels on every single house and the windmills around the country? You are really immune to different scenarios. So I believe we should really focus on the simple things. We should separate the cost from investments, and this is very important. We've been discussing that 1.5% of GDP should be roughly used or spent on the investment supporting the transition. In Poland, there are different estimates. We should go for around 70 billion Polish zloty per year of investments. Huge. But on the other hand, there is a question, what Poland spent on fossil fuels? And it occurs that last year, it was almost 200 billion Polish zloty that we paid. And this is, one time ignite, fired, and only polluting the atmosphere. So I really believe that this is a big business opportunity in terms of transition. We should simplify, and we should really focus on those main topics like renewable energy and energy efficiency. It makes sense. In the cases it doesn't make sense
fully commercially, then this is the role for the state, for the blended finance, to combine our forces and to create programs, guarantees. In the previous panel, there was a discussion about the risk weighting and the capital absorption, very important for banks. If you have a guarantee, which is covering that kind of portfolio, from the state perspective, for this guarantee, commercial banks are happy to pay. So in fact, this is not something that we are giving as a subsidy. This is something you are in fact earning money on. But for the banks, if you will compare the product covered by the guarantee and not covered, you can decrease your interest for your clients, but having this pay for a guarantee, but after this, you still will have much higher return on equity on this product than for other. So there are plenty of solutions that could be created, used to make those investments really attractive economically. And this is the way we should be, that's what I believe we should be promoting, not necessarily, I mean, the education, of course, on the climate, etc., but through the simple financial motivation. Sorry for a long answer.
May I just add to that, because that was very interesting. All the speech was interesting, but especially like the last part. With having the institution on the local governmental level, on the EU level, which provides guarantees or the insurance. Look at the export finance industry. Each country in the Europe is having ECA, Export Credit Agency, supporting the exports from that country to the other country. And this is exactly the products which you just displayed. Risk mitigation tool in the terms of guarantee or the insurance. How many such institutions do we have in the Europe for transition of the economy to sustainable? I don't know, except with one exception. Yeah? But you are focused only on the long-term transactions. We need something what is more for the small SMEs, because core of our activities, core of our economy is based on the SME clients. So we need something more. Let's put it flexible. I'm not saying that your institution is not flexible. That's what I'm saying. Sorry for that.
No worries. Pilar, would you like to add something?
No, I think maybe I went through a bit fast, but that's part of the objective. So when we partner with financial institutions, we look at what the financial system operating with smaller beneficiaries are requiring, right? That's why we select whether it is going to be a funded line, a credit line, or we go through guarantees, precisely to de-risk a portfolio, or even packaging portfolios of exposures and selling them outright through securitization. So it depends on what the bank needs to lower the cost so that they can pass that benefit on to whether it is the exporter or it is the SME or it is the household for the energy efficiency. I think in our observation in the energy efficiency space, I have to say we had been struggling a lot for many years to make headways into the energy efficiency space. I think there's still a lot to do, and the gap is humongous, whether in the retail space, SMEs across the board. But our observation, and that's the point I wanted to make, is precisely what Jaro was saying earlier. Last year was a turnaround moment for that space, I think. And it's on the back of the crisis. I mean, most of Europe, this is not specific to Czechia, it is not specific to the region, that cuts across the entire Europe. The business case all of a sudden made sense. People were looking at their energy bill compared to the investment that you have to make. That's brilliant. And we should take opportunity of that and roll it out at scale, because that's going to have a humongous impact.
Very well, thank you. Jarek, you brought some very good points. You mentioned the opportunities that are there. The program that you mentioned, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it was a program developed by the government, right? So it was a governmental initiative where the commercial banks stepped in, and in a way the market was created for that. So what obstacles do you see in grasping some of those opportunities? What players in the financial industry, should it be the government or maybe some other institution? What these different players should do to facilitate, to be able to grasp some of those opportunities better? Would you like to add something?
I can start. Maybe I can start, and
yes, and then
will be supplementing.
Sorry.
But of course, it depends on the business segment. So completely different, and it was already said by Mateusz. Completely different need for support will be with the retail individual clients, especially when we are talking about the big thermal modernization projects, and the support should be much broader. Not only subsidy financing, but also the technical advisory, which, by the way, also in many programs is financed through EU programs, grants. And completely different discussion based on sustainability-linked financing with the top corporate. These are completely different levels and different skills, know-how, knowledge needed from the bank. So retail and SME much more subsidized, and this is the reality. It was also said by Mateusz that those clients expect that kind of approach. And here the cooperation, with the SME, it's relatively easy to implement those subsidies, whereas for individual clients, especially for more difficult projects, stronger cooperation between the public and private side is required. So answering your question, depending on the business segment, but the cooperation, like under 17th of Sustainable Development Goals, this is key.
Very well. So here we use an example from Poland. I don't know if you, Ota, could you bring a similar example from Czechia, how government facilitates some of the markets, helps create a financial product?
Well, I believe there's a number of initiatives in terms of providing subsidies and incentives into investments that should lead to a higher energy efficiency. All these frameworks of refurbishing the houses, just because of the kind of structural issues of the housing fund that we have, not only in the Czech Republic, but in the whole region. It has a lot of common issues. If I come back to one of those points, I want to underscore is that we definitely understand the private sector to be the primary mover in terms of the transition, in terms of financing the transition. From the side of the government, we like to play a role of facilitator or a broker that sets a kind of transparent and clear regulatory environment. And part of it is, of course, some kind of incentives and subsidies to encourage sustainable investment. But what's very important is also to avoid or to remove elements that discourage sustainable investment. As a part of this, one of the important points that Petr mentioned is that we would like to screen the current existing disclosure and reporting mechanisms that are currently in place and see to what extent they comply with the new requirements coming from the side of the EU, because some of them are already used by companies and by financial sector players. And this would allow them to kind of follow up or build on something that they already know. One of these things that you mentioned, Piotr, it's a very important issue in kind of making the housing sector more sustainable with all these investment into renewables and energy efficiency. Ministry of Finance is part of quite a robust modeling exercise that's currently in place in the Czech Republic. It's organized primarily by Ministry of Environment, but other key stakeholders like Ministry of Industry and Trade are playing their important role too. And this is a couple of models working together, and it's a very important exercise because it informs these currently revised two key conceptual documents, which is the state energy policy and climate protection policy. And one of these preliminary outputs of this modeling exercise is an information that, given that gas was primarily meant as a transition source of energy before the Ukrainian conflict, and now the kind of taking up the renewables is much quicker, and it's accelerated. And in terms of all these requirements that this will mean, we have an information that, for example, there's going to be 10% to 15% additional workforce needed in the construction and building sector to install all these heat pumps and photovoltaic. And these are very important information that we need for medium-term to long-term strategy planning in the government sector.
Very well, thank you. Conscious of time, I suggest very quickly if each of you could summarize, maybe bring some remarks and think of a way forward with regards to transition, how to speed up the transition. So very quickly, a few remarks.
Master plan. We need a master plan on a European level. We need a master plan on the Czech level, on the CEE regional level, and for the industries. Unless we have a master plan, then we don't know where we are heading to. Right? Then transparency, methodology, simplification. All the players are really playing their role, meaning the state policy, which is transparent, regulatory framework, risk mitigations, which we touched already, incentives, and the commitment from the government. Commitment which goes beyond the election period.
Thank you very much.
It's a difficult.
Please.
All of the above.
So it's difficult to actually. You mentioned all the possible elements. I mean, from our side, I guess I can say we're open to cooperation on all these important initiatives. We definitely need a master plan. Our thinking is about providing all the key stakeholders with some conceptual documents like the sustainable finance strategy of the Czech Republic. We're working with the European Commission number of projects that should help to deliver this conceptual thing. But I guess it's really cooperation, working on like shared understanding and common vision of where we should go and what different stakeholders should do in this process.
Thank you. Pilar?
All of the above? No, I will choose three. Two I'm echoing, actually. One is all for collaboration of all actors involved. That is critical, everyone on the same line. Second, I think people are suffering from an overdose of concepts and spread of different standards. It is about standardization and simplification. That one I greatly echo. We're all getting an overdose. It's a tsunami of legislation, a tsunami of regulation, a tsunami of all sorts of things to amaze to make anything clear of. But the third one that I wanted to bring to the table is also innovation. I actually am relatively new to this region, and I think it has such a potential. And it has a potential in very many different respects, in vertically integrating into manufacturing and getting an industry out of the transition. And I think there's a lot of youth and talent and potential also to innovate. And Europe needs, guys, a lot of innovation to really scale up solutions that we would need to really get to net zero. And I really hope and I trust that this region can play a key role there in innovation too.
I do agree.
Thank you very much.
I think we need to get people aboard and not to leave anyone behind. Yeah, because it should not be just for the rich, and it should not be just for the fast ones. There are, of course, opportunities if you adopt faster, but even if you're slower, we should drag you along. And to to achieve that, I think we need much better communication of these issues. Yeah, so communicate really the solutions and opportunities that are there.
Eric?
Yes, so my first comment would be, Poland specific. So here the clear leadership on the political side should, that's pretty obvious. We are missing this, strong direction and consistent, that's the voice. And the second point, because I also do agree with all the points mentioned by you, I would also say about this data, it was all well covered in the previous panels. We haven't been speaking too much about the data, but this is also an element that would easier our life.
Thank you very much. So a few last words. We spoke about the role of governments, development banks, commercial banks. We spoke about different products, different solutions, different strategies. We spoke about the tsunami of regulation. But we simply also have to remember what is the setting and what the problem with this particular transition is, because the economy has been going through various transitions over the last hundreds of years, right? It's a kind of structural shift. I think that the challenge here is really timing. What sort of reality we want to end up with? Do we want to end up in a reality in which we will have to face even more risks coming from some of the physical changes, or do we want to tackle some of the transitional risks right now and diminish the physical risk of the future? So that's a question. That's something that everyone has to answer. And here we come to this question of speed, right? At what speed all of this should be really happening. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for joining the panel. And I guess now we are looking to a break, right?
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much for helping with my job as well, and it's no, it's good. This I think has been actually a very, very constructive, really forward-looking discussion, and it's really nice to see the consensus on the collaboration, which is amazing. Also, Pilar, I'm going to steal "Tsunami of Regulation." I'll definitely will start using that one. But it's really nice to see, especially to have actors on different sides and different parts of the financial industry and financial system, and I think especially for sustainability topics and climate risk and what it means and the impacts on the capital markets can be very complex. So I think especially going across sectors and actually going across different groups of people and societies. So that's why the collaboration, I think, is key, and it's really nice and really inspiring to see that this is the consensus here. And I agree with Mateusz as well, and I'm glad you brought retail into the discussion, because exactly just transition and retail clients and small SMEs are at the core of that transition, so we cannot forget about that. And talking too much now, but exactly as you said, we will have a 30-minute break, and so enjoy some coffee and some refreshments, and we'll be here in, I think, approximately maybe 2-3 minutes after 3. Thank you.
Thank you.